What is up, guys? So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about some efficient farming methods for Aurora Plateau, and that's to help you guys with farming your light materials, so the harder light materials, because light is actually a lot easier to make than the dark stones. For one, you don't have to farm the harder continent quite as much, but there is still a level of difficulty there that I do kind of want to talk about and show you guys how to mitigate that a little bit. So before we get into that, I have started some social media. I think I promised that in a previous video for a comment, under a comment. So if you guys want to talk to me or ask me questions, then hit me up on, I think I'll do Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I might not keep all of those, but just you can talk to me on there if you want. So first off, with Aurora Plateau, one of the key things that will help you farm this efficiently is to focus on the stage where you can easily have an elemental advantage for your primary farmers. And for some reason in this game, fire seems to tend to be the best farmers. There are quite a few farmers, but some of the top tier farmers seem to be fire, and the fire freed is one of those. So he's my favorite farmer. I've had him for quite a while now, and as you do dragons, you will earn essences and you'll be able to summon the fire freed. And I actually think he's one of the nat 4s that you should not feel bad about gleaming, because he will make your farming so much more efficient that gleaming him is totally worth it. He's actually probably more effective to gleam than nat 5, because in all honesty, nat 5s don't really have as much of a place in this game as you would think. Now, of course, their stats are as OP as it gets for quite a few of the nat 5s. It's just having a good place to use them. But he will definitely help your team. Now, I'm showing I think it's like the light warthog or wart frog or something. The only reason I have him is because I actually have this guy siphon gemmed for my Golems B10 team. There's no real rhyme or reason why I'm throwing him on this team. The only reason he's really here is because he's got siphon, he's got a moral boost, and he's got a good leader skill. I've actually run this particular team with a Fire Persephone when I happen to have a siphon set on her, and that's because she would have the elemental advantage, but she doesn't have a moral boost. But really, basically what I have there is a monster that I happen to be using Golems B10. So you can always substitute another fire monster for him. If you have the Fire Freak variant, you can run him as the leader to help get your damage up. My other favorite farmer here is the Dark Sierra. So you don't have to use the Dark Sierra. I know maybe half the population has her at this point. You can always use a Fire Siegfried in place of either the Fire Freed or the Fire Sierra. All you have to do is run Titans and earn your points and get him, and he's a good farmer for you. But there are other monsters you can kind of substitute to help do some damage. I kind of showed the Dark Seedler. She's not really a farmer, but you could think about it. We've had the Wood Incubus. He is definitely a farmer, although he is very hard to build with his crit requirement. I know we had the Wood Rudolph. You can think about that. Her damage probably won't be there quite as much. But you can always run a fire team. And so what I'm showing with this is my siphon team. And I know, guys, everyone does not have siphon gems. So what I'm going to do at the end of this video is I am going to showcase a potential team that you guys can use to farm this stage that does not require siphon. And I will talk about that when we kind of get there. But Fire Siegfried is obtainable, and he's a great monster to have. I haven't built mine because I haven't found one with gem slots that I like, but you know, definitely go for him if you need him. And also I have other farmers, and so it's not a real big thing for me not to use him. So you can also use the light Sierra if you weren't able to get the dark Sierra. That's totally fine too. Now the key to this really is having the Warder Arthur to aggro the damage here. Now this is a sample build to give you guys an idea of how to kind of mitigate damage on this stage to keep your squishy farmers alive. And this is one strategy to do that, right? So what you can do is you can run a water monster that will work as a bait unit, and will draw the damage of the wood units that are only present on this stage. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important that you know, you have that particular this particular comp. Or that particular the enemy comp. So you want to aggro, you want one monster to aggro the damage so that your squishy monsters can kind of do some cleanup. Now some weird mechanics in the last continent that I think exist. So for some reason, so if you guys have any exposure to Colossus, there's one gem set called the Gem of the Magi, and I think they got the idea for the Gem of the Magi from these monsters. So there seems to be some mechanic on this continent, the last stages of gameplay right now. You know, this is pretty much in-game content, right? This is the final stage that we have to farm in story mode as of right now. And there's this weird mechanic where these monsters will gain SP automatically each turn. They don't have, I think maybe one of them might have a moral boost, but the other one does not. And so, you know, what we have really is this kind of Gem of the Magi set on these wood monsters so that they automatically gain SP each turn. And so they're going to get their actives up a lot quicker than monsters on other stages. So that's one of the things that makes the stage or that makes this continent difficult, is the fact that these monsters gain SP automatically, and it's not from blue souls. So there's that. The other thing about the stage is that the gargoyles do have a petrify, and so if they get their petrify off on your farmers, then that will slow down your runs. It might not, you know, the minotaurs might do too much damage and kill your monsters, but the petrify will slow down your runs if it lands and it stuns your farmer, especially your freak. But you know, guys, that, you know, that's why I ran this tank unit when I first started farming this particular stage. Now the times range between you know, a little over a minute, like a minute 5 or something, roughly to, I think this one can go about a minute 40. Now I will say that my Warder Arthur isn't gemmed at, you know, for anything. I think he might have like a +3 gem or, you know, +1 gem. Actually, I think this one, when I did this video, he doesn't have 1 gem at all. He only has 2 gems on him, and that's because I just don't use him right now. But as you can see, he still does the job that he's supposed to. I do like the Warder Arthur and running him as a tank like this, because he is actually a good orb generator, because he will build up his own SP in 2 turns. He'll be 100% in 2 turns, even without a siphon set. And once he gets his active off, he will generate a lot of orbs for you to help supply your team. But you can always substitute the Warder Persephone, so she'll help keep your team alive, and she will aggro damage. So one thing that I haven't done, but you could consider doing if you want to kind of run a bait unit, a bait team for the stage is I think a lot of people probably have built a water cura for their fire titans. So if you want to run a bait unit like this, you can always think about doing a water cura or you can always, if you need a bait unit, you can always think about a healer, because they will help sustain your team, and they're naturally built very tanky, and you can always use that to aggro damage and keep your team alive. So there's that. The other weird mechanic on this particular stage is so you know, if you guys have ever fought a boss, you will know that the boss doesn't follow some of the rules of the game. So like one of the rules of the game that we're kind of exploiting here is kind of this this need for the enemy to do the most damage possible, which means that they will automatically attack elemental weakness, right? At boss stages, that doesn't happen. The boss doesn't care what element it's attacking, so it will attack randomly. And what seems to happen on these stages is that when the monster actually gets its active off, so the active is this 5-star skill, and that happens when the blue bar is up. When the monster gets its active off, it will not always target the elemental weakness, so it has more of a boss mechanic on its active skill. And so, you know, so if your attackers are too squishy, you know, they might be targeted with the active, or the petrify might still land on your you know, on one of your farmers. But you know, we're still trying to make use of the water monster to deal with that. But those weird mechanics do kind of exist in the game. But at least at the beginning, you can kind of draw the damage to one unit that you know is going to be the one to take the damage and kind of protect the rest, so that the rest can do the cleanup. So you know, guys, you can just kind of watch, you know, these runs. That's really all I wanted to kind of show here. You can always substitute fire monsters for what I have here instead. If you need the crit, you can always run the Ifrit as a lead. If you have a variant seer, I think she's got an HP or a defense lead, so if you need more sustain, you can do that. You can always run a fire succubus or fire leo lead if you need more HP to survive through the stages. In terms of time, I think that you know, if you're doing it somewhere around a minute, your times are very good on this particular stage. These monsters are level 98, which is much higher than our own levels, and so, you know, you just can expect, you know, what you can expect. Naturally, the more fire monsters you get on siphon, you know, the faster your runs are going to be. But you know, because siphons are fairly limited, you probably, you know, as you know, earlier in the game, you're going to want to prioritize who has those monsters and make use of them. So what I'm going to kind of showcase next is we're going to put together a non-siphon team. Some caveats about this. So what I wanted to do here is showcase a team which is very accessible to most people in the game. Now, you know, accessible in that you can get these monsters with the exception of our, you know, Nat 5 tank, but we talked about some, you know, alternatives for doing that. So, you know, these are accessible in that you can buy their soul stones to make these monsters. You can you generally get Nat 4s and summons pretty frequently. And you can kind of build these monsters. So these are pretty much the fire monsters that I have built so far. And you know, I am using the Cura here because sometimes when you run these kind of wood stages, and the same thing I've talked about with, you know, the wood golem and things like that, For some reason, well, not for some reason, it's pretty, clear as to why this helps. But, Fire Cura can generally stabilize a fire team if you're having difficulty with a fire stage. And, she's also a very good monster to have in Titans, to protect your fire monsters from damage. So, there are reasons to build the Fire Cura. And she kind of, like I said, she helps stabilizes a lot of fire teams when attacking wood monsters. Now in this case, if your monsters aren't built well enough, her shield would ideally help if it maintains, like if they don't break the shield, it should protect against the petrify. Also, just having a healer helps sustain, a team, keep them alive. But some like I said, so I think I mentioned this earlier, some caveats about the team that I'm showcasing here. So yes, they are obtainable in the fact that they are nat 4s, and you can get nat 4s in a number of different ways. But this team is, so the Fire Leo and the Fire Succubus are on a leech set. So one thing, usually when you run a fire team, for some reason it seems to be helpful to have them on have them be self-sustaining. And so I put a weird build on these monsters, generally because I have a lot of leech gems that I don't use, and I kind of just wanted to test it out on my fire teams. So this is more of just me kind of playing around with gems that I have and have no other use for. And I also wanted to test out reinforcing the Fire Succubus's her first skill, self-sustain, with the addition of a self-sustain from leech. As you can see, like with these runs, you don't even really need the Fire Cura. So you can, you also probably don't need the Warder Arthur. Both the Fire Cura and the Warder Arthur are ways of kind of mitigating damage. But if your damage is high enough and your monsters can self-sustain enough, then you don't need those type of monsters. You can consider keeping one or the other, if the petrify is slowing you down too much, and hope that they kind of decrease the chances of your fire attackers being petrified and CC'd, which in turn slows down your runs. So at the very end of this video, I'm going to put kind of like full fire teams on, so that you guys can see full fire teams. So a slight variation on my siphon team with the water tank, and this build with the water tank, this non-siphon build with the water tank. Also the Cura, so the Cura is also helpful for this particular team, in that she will, if you have her build on crit and you don't have to build the Cura on crit, she needs it for her first skill, but because she's really, her primary use is as a healer. Some people choose not to actually use her first skill, but if you do use her first skill and she crits, she will also help your team build up SP. So she's a good choice for running this if you're having difficulty with getting through this particular stage. This type of non-siphon team is naturally going to be slower than running something with siphon. But if you're having trouble with getting through it, then this is one option in doing that. But as always, for fire monsters with self-sustain, generally will do pretty well with running wood stages. And last, guys, so I'm going to kind of showcase the gems. So we're going to run through, I'll let this kind of run through one more time, and so you guys can just get a feel for this team. But I know a lot of times people like to see the gems. So I showed the gems on my siphon team, and I've showed the gems that are on this particular team. But like I said, guys, these monsters are on leech because I just have an overabundance of leech, but you don't really need it. So as you can see, like my Cura never gets her heal off. These monsters just self-sustain. So if they didn't have leech, the Cura would heal them. And of course you'd want the Cura to be on, have some pretty good resistance because of that petrify, so that she gets her heal off when you need it. But when it comes to sustaining the fire monsters, she's not really needed. So when she does get her heal off here, it's really to kind of help keep that water Arthur alive, because he's taking all that damage. But the fire monsters are sustaining. So if these monsters weren't on leech and self-sustaining, then she would help with keeping things alive. But these runs are 2 minutes, and so they're about double the time of my fastest team. But it depends on where you are in the game, in what you run. But Fire Leo and Fire Succubus, they are pretty much staples when it comes to dealing damage with a nat 4. Of course there are nat 5s that do a lot better, but this Fire Succubus will help sustain a number of different comps if you need them. And you can always throw these monsters into, if you're most people probably build these for B9 early on in game anyway. But yeah, so guys, let's take a look at the gems. So I know, I always get these comments, I know that new players are not going to have access to leech. But like I said, that's the reason why I showed the water, the water tank versus in the fire Cura. Everyone has access to a fire Cura. At a minimum, all you have to do is buy the stones from the shop. But guys, you can run regular gems on them. If there was a free day, I would show these monsters without it, but I can tell you, I'm 90% sure that it'll be fine if you just run the monsters without leech, because of the fact that Cura never got her heal off for the to sustain the fire monsters. But yeah, so lastly, what you guys can kind of see these teams running with more of a fire base and a variation on siphon. You don't really need to have you don't have to have siphon to farm Aurora Plateau. It's just going to be a little bit slower. You guys can see the comps needed for that. But yeah, guys, so I hope this kind of helped you kind of put together a team for Aurora Plateau. You can do similar things in both Skyfalls and Glacial Plains, because they also have the single target wood teams. Now I think Glacial Plains also has a water stage. You can do something similar with having a primary wood farmer, since we since a few months ago we had the Rudolph event and the Incubus rebirth. So those two can be used in a similar fashion to the Fire Fleet for farming those stages. If you don't want to build, if you don't have like a fire team, but you built your your Incubus or something, or your Rudolph. So definitely think about that. But as always, guys, I hope this helped. If you liked the video, hit that like button. If you have not subscribed to my channel, subscribe, and I will see you next time.